Good afternoon, guys. Good afternoon. Um, Apologies for starting the stream late. Um, yeah. How are you, Samuel? I'm sorry that I've not been able to assist you. Yeah, I'm sorry that I've not been able to assist you with the Nextjs thing. Have you tried to fix the bug? Have you been able to fix the issue? Um, yeah. So, we couldn't. I couldn't stream yesterday as I should have, right? Um, I was just trying to. I think I was busy, so I couldn't meet up. But I should have communicated that earlier, right? I was fixed up there. So, my apologies for not communicating early enough there. Samuel, have you been able to fix the bug of the next JS bug that you were having there? Mm. So today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to quickly um, implement some authentication, some sign up flow. That's the goal, right? That's the goal, to implement authentication. So if you can see these here, if you go to the login flow here, so would have you'd have you'd have a sign up flow like this, and then the sign up flow should allow you to um I'm not sure it should be a VPN thing though. It looks like it's supposed to be a Node.js thing. It looks like it's supposed to be a Node.js thing. And it happens when you run the next dev, right? That's when it happens. It shouldn't be a VPN thing. It shouldn't be a VPN thing. I think so. It should most likely be something around Node.js. What version of Node.js are you using as well? I mean, that's something that I think I want to know. What version of Node.js are you using? So the goal is to try to build this functionality, even though I think yeah, we could do this here. So if you do this, let's see. And so if you try to do this here, you should get something that looks like this. Uh, what? So you see this server side. Well, I should have checked this on the client side though, instead of sending this information. But I'm curious to know why it took longer. It took a little while. Took a little while. Hmm. Okay, it tried to submit the information. Tried to submit the information. Yeah. Boss, how are you? Thanks for reaching out. Um, the, um, okay, I think this is definitely it tries to submit the form here, and this is the form data that we are sending. We're sending this information. So you see that the password here that I'm trying to use are not. I mean, it's not anything serious there. So. Um, yes, I did not stream yesterday at all. I didn't stream at all yesterday. I didn't stream at all yesterday because I was not available. I wasn't available yesterday. So basically, we'll try to implement this. We'll try to implement this, and if you try to submit with a user that already exists, I think it should tell you that the user already exists as well. So you can also see this as well. You can see that user already exists. So that's some nice. That's like some some validation there. And but if we use an information that doesn't exist, I think we should be able to use something that doesn't exist right here. Hmm. Okay, so let's do this. So by default now I was able to sign up, right? I was able to sign up, and the idea is that if you sign up, it should automatically log you in, right? So that you're able to see all the invoices, then you see all the customers, and you can sign up back. Yeah. So, but I will be streaming next Friday. Hopefully, I should be streaming next Friday, and I think on next Friday, definitely I have a lot of JavaScript stuff. I have lots of JavaScript stuff that I think we are somewhere around the data types here. And the last thing I talked about in JavaScript was I talked about date and time. I talked about date and time. And I mean, I've not recovered from the date and time streaming that I did, because I really really learned a lot personally, and I'm still learning a lot, right? So I mean, that's the advantage of the streaming there, right? It's not just about me teaching it, right? I also learn a lot, and I hope that you're learning a lot as well as I am learning. And I hope that every other person that finds the YouTube videos can also like learn, and also hope that they are able to build something, right, with all the things that they learn. All right, because I'm still exploring date and time, and trying to just especially the new APIs, the temporal API. So I've been playing with it a lot more lately, and hopefully I should have another video on it soon. I wish I can do another video on temporal and how to use it more efficiently. So I mean, next Friday should be something around object key values. I think object key values, entries, and I think object key values, entries, group, because we have object dot groups now. Those are the three things, and then the structuring, right? We should be able to look at that. Then after that, we can then talk about the other parts, right? The maps and sets. Maps and sets is another interesting thing that I should talk about. So I would find time to talk about it as well, and I hope I can come prepared this Friday, and yeah, have like a guide. I should have like a slide or something, like a guide to help me to do the stream there. So I'm trying to also improve the way I deliver like the content, so in a way that makes sense for everybody to learn. So, and maybe we can also have something like um some things to build, some code to write, some things to implement. I think with the date and time, we did some task, right? Some tasks that we had in the javascript.info. So hopefully I can find a way to improve the quality of all the things I am doing, right? The goal again is to make sure that everybody benefits as much as possible, right there. So but today I'm going to be focusing on building the whole like registration floor. I already built it somewhere else. So I already built it somewhere else. um but let me try it again. And I already built it on a branch, on another branch, and we're just going to be implementing that same thing here. So when you register, it's supposed to automatically log you in, right? And after you sign out, you can then log in, right, with your new registration details. So that is the goal today. That is the goal today. And all this is with your um hot.js. So all this is with the hot.js, especially the new the 5.0, because I think they have like the 5.0. They have the 5.0 implementation, right? It has some nice guides there that you can definitely look at to understand what is going on there. So that is, and it also has you can build your own provide. You can use the providers like GitHub. I think we would add this to it. We can add this sign up with Google. We can add this sign up with GitHub easily. We should be able to add this easily. So, and I think they support pass keys as well. They have a partial support for this does it not require authentication or validation on email before you can log in? Does it not require authentication? Yes, the whole flow requires that, and I have built all that, right? I built the whole authentication flow, and I'm going to show you guys how to also implement that. So that's what I'm going to be showing you. So, but I did sign up already, right? That was what I did. I did sign up. This is like sign up here, and I can use any email, and yeah, you can sign up here. And if you sign up this, right, if you do the register, it's automatically registers you and it signs you in automatically. So that's what I implemented. It signs you in automatically, and yeah, and after you sign out again, now you can then log in with those details. You can just log in with the details that you just used now. So did you get it, Miriam? So that's like just implementing the whole flow there is what I would be showing you. Is there any validation for proper email format? Yes. If on the registration flow, I think so. But I've not taken it out. Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's because of the way this project is, right? That's why I mean, I'm not using maybe all those kind of validation. So, but in the real sense, if you were to be building a business, right, you want to verify the email whether it's not a bot, right? You want to send. So when you do the registration flow, you want them to. But it depends on the product. It depends on what you're building and all, right? So, but Destiny, you can see that there is some form of there's some of validation. Is the email verification whether you're passing, even though it's because I disabled the client side validation. So there's a client side validation that you put on the input, right? And if it is not a email, it's not going to even allow you. But I disabled that. I use type text so that my server side validation can kick in. So basically, this is coming from the server side validation which I'm doing. So, but then you can always use input type email, right? Which is like your first layer of defense. Input type email protects that, and eventually, if somebody bypasses the input type email, then you can also check it on the server side, right? So we're going to just build all this flow right now, and yeah, we'll be able to just put something into the database, and again, we're using Hot.js, the V5, which supports these four kinds of verification, right? It supports OAuth, it supports magic links, it supports using your credentials, right? And it supports WebAuth. And this is really beautiful for you guys, right? Because instead of just using Firebase or using Auth0, right, you can go ahead to use this to build something up yourself. We can use regex also in the pattern attribute, right, for the HTML input. Yes, I think, yeah. So if we do mdn input, we should be able to mdn input. Am I not signed in? It's input type email. That's the input type email. So input type email, it allows us to use pattern, right? You're right, Destiny. It allows us to use pattern, and you can pass a regular expression. Yeah, you can pass a regular expression to check. I mean, how many of us know how to use regular expression? That's another very interesting area of JavaScript that is somehow always tough for somebody who is just learning to write code. Regular expression can be, yeah, it can be tough though. So I'm going to this is my this is my code base here, and I'm going to check out to, I think, geez, I'm going to check out from this branch, git checkout main, I think. And if I check out to the main branch, how was the experience? Was it a good experience or a bad one? Someone. So we can open my new ID, and definitely do not have this here. So here we have, yeah, we don't have the register form. So we're going to be setting the whole flow up. I want to look at what we have though on this flow. Don't save. Don't save. Don't save. So let me check this branch to see what I have on this branch. Because I know it's been a while I pushed to the main branch. It's been a while since I pushed to the main branch. So pnpm run dev. Alright, pnpm run dev. And while we're waiting for that to come up, I think my branch, the code should be way ahead. Should be way ahead. GH repo, I think, hyphen web. GH repo view. I think we should be able to do view. And yeah, so the last thing I did was I added pagination to the main branch. The last thing I did on the main branch was to add pagination. That's interesting. Very far there. Like we're very far and very behind. The branch is very far and very behind. But we should be able to quickly come up to speed, right? So this is what we have. We have bare bones login stuff, right? Yeah, we still have the bare bones stuff, dashboard, right? We have the dashboard. Okay, and what do we have? I think Invoices. Do we have invoices? Okay, we have invoices. So yeah, we have. I mean, this is quite a lot here, and then can you create here? You can create here. Let's see, 100. Let's see, pending. Okay, the create works as well. Then can I update? Okay, yeah, I can update as well, but I'm not sure validation is here. Yeah, yeah, not sure. Validation should not be there. Yeah. So validation is not there. And when you create new as well, do we have validation? No, we don't have as well. So I'm just going to try to quickly set everything up. Even the whole, I think the login flow as well is not here. So I'm just going to quickly do that. All right. And so some of you that you've missed some of the stream, you can quickly come up to speed, right, in some of the things that we have done. You can quickly come up to speed with some of the things that we've done. But the goal today is to show the registration flow, right? To show you the code for the registration flow. So I'm going to try to fix many of the things that are missing here. So the first thing that is missing is the UI for the login is not complete. So as going to go to um, so we have so I'm just going to copy some of the existing stuff. So in the login we have the login UI here, and I'm just going to replace this with this here. And what else? We also need, I think, our action. Yeah, we need an action for the login. So if you go to the action, so the action is where all the things that has to do with the database operation. So you can see that at the top of the action, you can see this use server. So this use server tells, right, so Nextjs knows that this code here should only run on the server, that the code that we have there should only run on the server. And to create the whole I think another thing to do is that, so this should give us the login flow. If we check where's the UI, where's the browser, localhost, then we should have a login flow, right? The login is back to the way it should look. Then just to make this login work, right, because it's not working on this branch, so I'm just going to make this whole login work from the scratch. So for those who were not around when we did the login, you can also follow as I implement that, right? So the first thing to do is you make sure you have your auth.js, which is next auth, the beta version. You make sure you have it installed. Let's package.json, dependency, right? So I'm going to be installing Nextauth. So to install Nextauth, let me check the version that I have so that I install the exact the exact version. So I'm going to install Next Hot. Next Hot. Where's the terminal? So I'm going to do next pnpm install next Hot, right? And I want to do at 5.0.0 hyphen, I think 0 hyphen beta dot 17. So that's the exact version that I have. And I can upgrade my PMPM as well. So we can do that here. Did I say you should update anything? Why did it update Nextjs now? Already in the dev dependency was moved to dependency. Who told you to install? So this is my problem with PNPM. It installed next 1.14. Who sent you work though? Okay, but at least we have next hot. I guess the package lock must have been different because I don't know why there was changes there. Why did it change? That's not a problem. We can always figure out. I just want to be sure that I'm installing the exact version that I need, and you can update this as well. Okay, so we can then set up. The first step to do to set up your next auth, right, is to create your auth config. That's the first thing. So you create your auth config in the root of your what? Auth dot what? Auth dot config dot what? TS. And in here we're going to import. The goal is to do export const, right, your auth config, right, the auth config, and it's going to be an object, and the first thing in the object is pages, which is the first member, right, is pages. And it also allows us to then do callbacks. So that's the two major thing in our what in so if we are going to be using providers, right, such as like GitHub or Google sign in, right, you want to have your providers, the arrays of the providers that you're using, you want to have that, right, as well. And but definitely we're not yet using the provider, so we're focused on just creating a sign-in flow basically. So in the callback we would have something called authorized. That is going to be a method, right, an authorized method. And the authorized is going to have this prop called what? It's going to return expose something we call you have auth and request, and then we're going to have something we call next URL, right? The structure your next URL how of your request, and that is our method. So you can then do check if it's logged in. I'm just trying to check if we're logged in. So with auth.js, if you are logged in, if somebody is logged in, right, the auth.user would have something there, right? So you want to now check if there is that auth user. So that means there is a login. And you also want to check our dashboard, right? If we are on dashboard route, and we can check our next URL dot what path name. If it starts with dashboard, I think I can always do this here, and should be able to make this. So this also check if we are on the dashboard, on the dashboard route, right? And we can then do if we are on if we are on dashboard, right? Is on on dashboard. So what we want to do if they're on dashboard, right? You want to check if they are logged in, right? Definitely before they can get to dashboard, they should be logged in. So now you're saying that if the person is logged, if the person is logged in, right, then just stay here, right? Just return return true. That is, they are okay, right? Before you can get here, you must be logged in, right? If you're on dashboard already, and obviously if you're logged in, right, you're good. But if you are if you are not, right, if you're not logged in, right, you want to then return return false, right? And the idea of returning false is to redirect the person to you want to redirect them to to the right place, right? So you redirect um unauthenticated users on authenticated user to the login flow. Okay, and else you can also do else. So if the person is on dashboard, yeah, I think we can then do no. We should be able to now do the proper. I think we can now do a redirect here, right? Let's do response dot redirect response dot redirect, and this should redirect to you want it to be a proper URL with the existing base URL. So the reason why we're creating a new URL is you want to redirect to the existing URL with the adequate information. So you want it to be dashboard. Go to what am I writing though? If is on dashboard and the person is logged in, right? We are doing return true, right? But if the person is on dashboard and they are not logged in, you want to return false, right? Because you want them to go to the login page. Else if login, so the else is if here, if the person is logged in, right? So if the person tries to log in, right, just redirect to dashboard, because dashboard is the route, is the URL, right? Dashboard is the proper URL where you should go to after you log in. And after you do this, you can then return true. That's the authorized flow. Basically, that's the bulk of authorized flow. So this is just a check that would always be the check, and if the person is not in the right place, they would always be sent away back. And you want to type it with something called satisfies next hot config, and we want to import the next hot config from import next hot from just import and let it be a type next hot config from next hot. So this is just the checker here that checks. So after we set this up, then we can go to our action, um, our action, and create a. Why is it that this is? Why do I have to do this? And create a inside a list of the actions that we have now. You then want to create a authenticate flow, a function that can help us to do authenticate. You want to create a function that can help us to carry out what authentication action. Um, let's see. And before we also do that, I think there's another file that we should create. I might need to create. Let me check the documentation again. We might need to create. Let's get started. Let's just do installation, authentication, credentials. So the kind of authentication that we are doing is credentials, right? You're using a username and password, right? That's credential. So we should create this auth.ts file. We're going to create this auth.ts file. So the auth.ts file is you are taking next auth from next auth, you're importing credentials from next auth provider credentials, and yeah, this is just a logic, your own logic to hash the password and stuff, right? And once we set this up, yeah, it's the one that is going to now return a handler. It's going to return a sign in, and it's going to return a sign out, and it's going to return a hot. So this will be functions, right, that you can then use later on in your action. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead, right click here and do what hot.js, sorry, hot.ts. I'm so used to js. Hot.ts. So this hot.ts is not supposed to do in this situation. Now we have, if you check packet.json, we have bcrypt. So we have bcrypt, right? We're using bcrypt for our hashing of the password. for the sorting and the hashing of the password. So sorting is basically when you take an empty password, a normal text that is a password, then you hash it and you turn it into an encrypted value. So it is only the encrypted password that we can save, right, into the database. So you don't save people's password directly into the what? Into the database. So we import from Nextjs now. That's the first one. Import from Nextjs, and we also want to import credentials, right? Those are the two major things. Import credentials from Nextjs, then forward slash providers, forward slash credentials. Those are the two major things, and then we can now do you can do a const, right, and destructure something out of what? Next hot. So next hot accepts it should be a function that accepts objects. And the first one thing that you want to pass is you want to spread your auth config, right? So the auth config that we created here, we want to import the auth config. Did I export that auth config? So if we export the auth config, then we can import it by saying import from I think I can use auth forward slash, is it hot now? Yeah, I think we should be able to do this. Auth config.ts. We should be able to do this. We don't need to put ts, I guess. And let's see whether it will understand what we are doing. Does it understand what? Does he understand? He should give me to complete though. I don't know how to bring my intelligence here. Sometimes my intelligence is not working the way it should work. So hot config, let's see, is it working? Hot config, and we can put our providers here. And these providers would then be a object of your credentials. So in this place now, it's supposed to take email. I think these credentials should be lower based on what the documentation said. Okay, should be capital. Okay, the first one is capital credentials, and the second one is capital credentials, and inside of the capital credentials we'll have what? So the object of credential is where you specify the field that you'll be submitting. That is, what are the fields that you want to save into the database, right? That you want your user to take. So you want your email and password. So we then do a credentials, right? Credentials, and this will be what? Email. So I think AuthJS can also give us a it can give us a UI. It can give us a pre-generated UI for sign up flow. I think so. That's why if you pass in label and all of these things there, it will generate some UI for you. But if you put empty there, it means you want to handle it yourself. You want to create form that will handle the whole authentication flow by yourself right there. So that's what that means. And credentials, right? We then can do a method which is going to be an async method, comma, an async method which will do what? Authorize, right, our user. So this is the major place where um so based on the credentials our user is going to be submitting, so we will do one step here. The first step here is to definitely make sure that we kind of like validate the information coming from what? Information coming from the form. And another thing is what you want to check. If the password, yeah, definitely you want to check if the password supplied, right? You also want to check. So you want to check if the user exists. I think you want to check if the user exists in the database. So if the user exists in the database, if the user exists in the database, if the user exists in the database, if user exists in the database, you want to check the password. Check if the password supplied by the user, if the password supplied matches, if the supplied password matches the current so match the hashed password in the database. So this is here. Obviously, if the user does not exist in the database, what you want to tell them is, let's just do maybe 2a, and we want to do 3. You want to do 3 here. So if you check the database and that particular email does not exist, definitely you want to bounce the person back, right? Just you want to maybe return null, or tell them that what credentials supplied is what is invalid. So if the user exists in the database, check if the password that is supplied is the correct password, right? And if the other part would have been that, so if the user does not exist, you can return null, right? Just to stop the whole process. Or if the password does not match, return no. If the password does not match, this is the one I think I want. Yeah. If the password does not match, return null. No, you can't return null there. Sometimes here you can decide the right error message to say. You can decide to tell some website will tell you that wrong password. You would have seen some websites that will tell you wrong password, but a good website should probably not tell you wrong password. If they know what they are doing, right? So they probably just bounce you back and say something wrong or authentication, whatnot. It depends. But if the password does not match, if the password match, let's just undo the case. Exactly. But if you say it does not match email, you are also giving somebody that is like an hacker an idea that maybe somebody's email exists in the database, that they should keep trying. So you don't want to give another person a idea that somebody has an account with you, but they are just using wrong password. So if somebody knows somebody's email and they try it on another site, right, they would always know that, okay, maybe the password is not correct. I just need to like guess the password more. So you don't want to give somebody an hint that maybe the email already exists or something. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So you want to be very careful, like the right error message that you're returning, as the case may be there. But the major thing is that if the password match, that's the major thing. That once the password match, then we want to what? We want to authenticate. You want to just sign them in, right? You want to return. So you want to return that user record, right? So it's that user object that will be passed to the what? To the hot object. And that's what would make us know that we are currently what? Logged in. So this next auth returns an object, and we can say something like this now. Next hot, next hot, and you can now destructure out of that next hot. Now you can say next hot has what? Next hot should have hot inside. Next hot should have hot inside. Hot, comma, sign in, right? A sign in function and a sign out function, right? And we can export these three things out there. So you should be able to do export directly on this one. So let me just click to restart Zod because I don't like what Zod is not giving me the proper validation. I don't like what I'm having. So let's write the code for all these flows that we have written out here. So if we want to write the code for all these flows, right? So the code here would be, the first one is I'm going to create something from Zord. So for those of you who have noticed, there is a particular npm package called Zord, which exports something called from Zord. It gives me something called Z, right? Z. And with that Z, I can create I can validate something. So we can say Z, right, dot what? You can use Z to create a object. The Z object that gives you to create a object that is going to match what we want. So we're having email in this situation, right? Email, and you want the email to be what? A string, and you want it to be type email. So this will add regular expression validation to this by default for you. So you don't have to do that yourself. And the other thing that we are passing is password, right? You can have some other strict stuff with the password here. You can have some other crazy requirements, but I mean, this is fair enough. Just make it six. Six is fine. Minimum of 6 characters. And once we create this thing here, we can now do dot what? You can do dot save pass. So save pass means that whatever was passed, so the data that will be sent from the form will be sent inside this credential. So you can just pass that whole object, right, to what? To save pass right there. And it will go ahead to return, it must return something called like is so what it will return will now be like, is either it returns like a object with error that, oh, validation could not, there was error during validation or something, or it will return success, right? A dot success if it was what? Successful. So it will be something like this. Now it is always dot success. So if not dot success, definitely it means there was an error. So we don't want to handle the scenario for this, right? All we just want to handle is what if it was success. So if it's not successful, you want to send back, you want to return back a null or something for that case. So if it was successful, we want to then do we want to then do yes, we want to destructure. You can destructure out, right? Out of that credential, the credential will only contain the email and the password that is being sent as object. So you want to destructure that out of what? The credential dot data, right? Pass credential dot data. So this will contain the email that was validated and the password. And you can see that what it is type, like it comes with type, it comes with type already, right? And it knows that it has only email inside and password inside. And this is some of the interesting thing that Zod gives to us here. And I think if we check pass credential here, it will be dot error. And is it dot error now? It should be pass credential dot something. Pass credential should have a error there, but let me go in there too much. So after we've destructured the email and password, we want to write a function. We want to write a function that is going to that's going to be an action as well, right? The check if the user exists in the database. So I'm going to write that function inside of my actions. Well, let's just write it here. This is the place where we have been writing almost all of the database fetching that we have been doing. So we have, okay, we already have this get user. So we use this get user here, right? You pass your email to this get user, and the goal is that next config prettier. Do you mean I should install next config prettier? I think I have it installed or something. Is it for next config prettier? Small packet of JSON. Next config. I think config. Yes, lint config prettier. What does that do though? ESLint. There's ESLint, and there is ESLint next, and there's ESLint config prettier, and we have prettier setup. Just basic setup for prettier and ESLint already. And so we can import into this auth now. We can then import our get user, right? We can import, or let's just write the get user. You can say get user, right? And get user just takes email alone, I think. Takes email alone. And we can await this, and it should return const what? A user. So this should return fetch from our database. Let me check what is return again to be sure. Right. Yeah, it returns the user, or it returns an error message. So after this, then we want to check. So we are on this 2A, then we want to do 2B, right? To check if the password. So now, if user, so you want to only go in, right? If user, right? Then we also want to check password, right? Whether it matches what our password. So Another thing we can do that you can do, maybe we could just handle the not case. Maybe we should handle the not case and say if not user, then you can maybe return null or something. But like I said, this is where you probably handle some, you return a proper object with a proper error message, right? Depending on what you agree on with your team. So now we can now try to what, to match the password inside the database with the password that is sent. So if password match, right, you're going to be doing a what, a bcrypt dot compare, right? So we want to compare the ordinary password with the other password. We want to compare the ordinary password with the password that was returned here. So you compare this password with what, with the password that is in the user field, right? And we can say import bcrypt from bcrypt. That should take that out. So if the password match, right, we want to now do you can just return that user. So if the password match, if password match, you want to what, return the user. And else now, right, you just want to maybe console.log on the server. So you want to console.log some things there so that you can be aware that, well, yeah, invalid credentials. And you can also want to handle this error message properly, right? But then depends. So you have what, null there. So basically now, why am I having this authorized error though? So the idea here is what, you're comparing the password that the user put in the form with the user.password, the password that comes back from the database. So if we check the database, let's see, if we check Vercel, if we just go to the project that we have hosted, you would see if we check our storage, and you want to um, we want to check users. So you see that there's a password, or there's a password field right here that we are storing. But this password here is the password that has been hashed, right? It's not the real password. We have hashed it using bcrypt to hash. So, and this way now, we would now, you need to now compare it with the new password. Does it match? And, and that's what we want to like do there, right? Just comparing whether the password match. And then the final thing that we want to do is we want to make sure, I don't know why, but why TypeScript is busting this. We then want to make sure that still no error message in the terminal, so we are still good. um Promise user is not assignable to credential partial. I'll fix that later. Well, let's just go on and see something work. And so we then need one more thing in the action, which is supposed to be the place where we're going to carry out that logging in itself, right? Because it is in the actions that we have access to our form data, right? It is in the action itself that we have access to our form data. So here we will just do a what, a authenticate function, right? Which is it's definitely going to be an async function. It's going to be an async function from the top. Mm. So here it's going to be an async function, and it's going to be authenticate, which we use the authenticate. It's going to use the existing authorize, and it's going to use this the object that is returned here. This signing object that is returned here, that's what it's going to use to carry out the signing process. So if we have this authenticate, right, we can take this here to let's just leave that here. So here it's going to be inside of it, it's going to do a try, right, because we want to do some async operations, and you want to do an await. You want to sign in, right, and you want to bring the sign in from the hot, right? You can bring the sign in from where? Sign in from what? Hot. And you're going to pass it what, the kind of sign-in that we are using. And since we're using what, credentials, so you can see here that I think you should see GitHub here, you see Google here, right? You should see all these options there. So we are using credentials, and in the credential option we're going to just pass what, form data. And where's our form data coming from? The form data will come from the prop here. So here there will be what, prev state, right? A previous state of our form and form data. So the previous state will be, we'll just say it's a string or undefined. Let's just put it as undefined. And we can see our form data is type form data. Even though some persons say form data type is not good, or at least it's something that we can work with. And so if this does not work, you want to catch what? You want to catch the error, right? And if we catch the error, you want to see that if the error is an instance of, if the error, you want to see that if error instance of what, instance of hot error. So if it is instance of hot error, you want to undo the error, right? So you can do, if the error type, error dot what, error dot type is equals to what, if the error dot type is equals to, so you have this beautiful TypeScript preview, so access denied, blah 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 blah. But if, I think we're looking for credential signing now, if error type is credential signing, you want to see that what, just return a string of what, invalid credentials. And else, now we can say else, just return um, the most common string in the word here is something, what, something went wrong. Let's try again. So this is authenticate flow now, and in the end you want to throw the error, right? You want to throw the error after the if statement. You want to throw the error so that Nextjs app will be aware of the error right there. And That is yeah, that is the basic auth flow. So how do we plug all of these together, right? How do we plug all of this together to our form? So to plug all of these together to our form is we would need to go to the login page. Where's the login page? Page.tsx here, and this is the login form. And in this login form, we want to bring in some. You want to bring in some from JavaScript here. So you want to call the actions right here. And so in this place, um, will be we'll be importing the action called authenticate, right? And that's what we're going to be using, that authenticate. So I'm coming. I'm trying to confirm something. So we will need there should be. So here we're going to need the use so if we check, I think we should have a form that we have worked on before now, which is the the form in the dashboard. If you look at yeah, in the invoice, sorry, in the invoice we have the create invoice form. Okay, I think this is really, so here you can see that hmm, create invoice action here. So this is directly, we're not using the hook yet here. So I need to fix this up to use the hook, the right hook there. But here now, I'm going to use the use forms state hook. The use form state hook from React DOM. I think it's coming from React DOM, right? And so what this does is that it helps us to manage the state of the form so that anytime it shows error, you still have access to our previous information, right? So the use form would take the authenticate. Authenticate. Are we exporting the authenticate? I'm not sure. Let's check actions. So we are not exporting the authenticate. Export authenticate. If you go to the login form, we can then pass authenticate here. Authenticate. So here we bring in the authenticate, and authenticate is expecting us to pass a I think it should be like a default. It expects like two things, which is like a default state for error message. So we want to say the default state should be, so you can see that it knows the possible, based on the way we wrote the code, and because we are using TypeScript now, it knows that the possible error, the two possible error that can come out here is invalid credential and something went wrong, please try again. And how did it know this, right? And that's because it is, this use form state is looking through this authenticate, and it can really smell that based on what this authenticate looks like, right, this is likely to be the possible error here. So the use form the use form hook is able to infer, right, is able to infer what the possible error is. But here now what we'll just do is we'll just set this to be undefined. We'll set this to be undefined because we don't know what the error will be by default until the error happens. So you want something to happen first before we know. Or you can say we can say it should be error message. You can say it's empty string, right? Depends on and this returns just like your use state. It returns arrays of two things. So the first thing will be the possible error message that can happen. And if we look at this error message now, you can see that it is either a string of invalid or something went wrong or undefined because I set the default to be undefined here. And we can say what, comma, and the second thing it will have is what, dispatch. So the dispatch is this what, this authenticate here, right? It takes this authenticate here and gives us this dispatch here, and then we can now say what, action, right? It should be what, dispatch here. And we can then use the error message, right, in this place. We can use the error message here. You can see here that this is where we're going to add our error, and we can, if there is error message, and we can say that, oh, this is what should happen if there is error message. And we can say that if there is error message, open this, if there is error message, right? And if there is error message, you want to write some JSX, right? You want to write some JSX, and we want to do, let's just do a fragment. Let's do a fragment, and we are able to do exclamation icon, right? Class of height 5 with 5, text to be read, a paragraph of text. Let's just do this. Let me change this to paragraph, text 500. Let's just use small text, it's fine. I think we can use the red color still and use the error message still here. And we can try this now to see. Also, if we have some validation, right? The server-side validation, if we were to be like using the full server-side validation, we can also add some server-side validation here, because this is just using required, right? And I said that there are malicious people that can manipulate this required and take required out, right, maliciously, just to try your what, your, and then type email is also another validation. And something like what Destiny was also saying earlier, that we can put what, you can put pattern. Yeah, you can also use pattern here and write a regular expression here, but that's not my business. So then another thing is that if you try this, and let's say we're using Zod, because we're using Zod to actually validate, but what we are just not doing is that we are not returning the O inside of, let me check the file where we wrote that again. I think we wrote it inside this hot.ts. Yeah. So you can see that here we're still using Zod to do some validation right here, but we're not just like, if the error happens, we're not returning any serious thing here. So assuming we're returning some serious things here, we can always get the error back on the client side. We can always find a way to return this, return a particular error back, so that we're able to undo it inside of the form, right, for server side validation there. But that's something I can also add on here, right? But let's try and let's test this. Yeah, I think if you look at the way where TypeScript is able to infer something back for us, right? I think so, right, Jackson? Really, TypeScript is just so beautiful now that it's a must to have in your development workflow, right? You need that beauty in your development workflow just to make life easy a little bit. So let's look at what we have. Um, let's refresh this and let's see. We have something, or our server broken? Um, I think Is my server broken? If the server is broken, let's just go ahead let's go ahead to let's just go ahead to I'm just going to stop the old server thing, right, and just run it one more time. Start the server one more time. So I'm getting some error, right? You're importing a client, a component that needs to use form state. It's only work in a client component, but none of its parents are marked to use client. So they're server component by default. So I guess that in the top of this here, we are supposed to be what? Be doing a what? I think we're supposed to be doing a use client here. Um, which is quite necessary, right? It's supposed to be a client, what? Client side, what? Use what? Client. And this is supposed to, let's try to save this. Hot config line. There's a error in my hot config. Hot config on line 17. It's my hot config busting here. So it's because import type next config. Okay, sorry, we didn't fill these pages. So pages is sign in. The sign in flow is supposed to route you to / login, right? And / login, because that's where our route is. Callbacks, authorized. Authorized takes in hot request. Yeah. What's missing here? What is missing? The satisfy is not correct. Where's the bug? Where are you? Then callback is supposed to be an object that returns authorized, request, and next URL. Right, first line here, return true here, it's false here. Don't know what is missing though. Satisfies. This should be correct though. and we can say it does something like this. Satisfies next hot. Yeah. So what was the error earlier? So we have something here. And so if we try to bring in, say, any existing, maybe let's just try this now. And so you can see, right, that there is invalid credentials here. And I think we should have some plenty noise on the server, right? So it's picking this, and this is one of the console.log that we are using. And again, the reason why you're only getting invalid credential is because that's the only thing that we are doing here. Say you want to maybe say another kind of error, right? You can always use another kind of error to validate. And another thing is some persons might also use like a toast for this error. It depends on what your UI is. So if I use the correct password, right, I should be able to go in and be routed to the dashboard. It really did work, but it did not route me to the dashboard. And I think let me console.log for me to be sure that it's doing the right thing, because it looks as though it did the right thing, but the only thing is it did not completely sign me in. Yeah, I think this does work, but it is not routing me to the right flow. But I need to console.log somewhere here to be sure that I'm having is logged in, and you can do this here. No. I mean, this is just give me console.log here, and we can do is on dashboard, right? So that we can see what's going on here. And inside of this auth.js as well, I can also console.log this user, console.log user, so that I think to see what is going on. So if I check, so it's definitely getting the right user here. I'm seeing the user from the database. So it's got to that line, and I want to console.log password match, right? And one more thing is, do I have any logs here? Okay, no logs here at all. I think this should be invalid credentials. Yeah, it should be invalid credentials. So password matches as well. So if password is matching, then it should return this user here. Then If it has returned this user here, then we should have the auth. There should be something here. It's not authorizing here, and I don't know why it is not authorizing. There's a problem somewhere there. I think I know, or I might know why. Hmm. Do we have all the details that we need there? Hmm. Hmm. Let's see. It's supposed to. The authorized is not. It's not even getting into the authorization at all. So if not here, I think this is what, but it's still the same. Is it the same thing? I think, but it's not console.login here. So I wanted it to at least console.log here. Let me see whether you're here. You're getting here. Is this authorized call at all? It's not calling that authorized off the top. Uh, it is not calling. I think I found the error. So I'm supposed to create a was supposed to create a middleware.ts inside of, I think the documentation said something about middleware.ts. There should be a middleware.ts file. So it's the middleware that tells the middleware tells is the middleware that tells which files that which are the routes in my Nextjs to be authenticated. I think, if I'm correct, I'm not totally sure, but so it should be at the root of our work here as well. We can then do a new file, and it can be middleware.ts. So middleware.ts imports next hot from here. It also does import our auth config, import the auth config, and it's supposed to now export default. It's going to export default next hot config.hot. Okay, that hot, yes, the hot that we created, that we are returning. There's a hot that we're returning in the next hot here. And it also export another thing, right? It can export out const config, where here we are specifying a matcher that must be matched, a matcher, and this matcher is supposed to be something that looks like this. I'm just going to copy it. What did I expect? Copy and paste the whole thing there. Should be this. So the major thing that I know here is that this is protecting our application entirely, right? That is, protect not API routes. Not, we don't have API folders. It's not checking the dot underscore next files. It's not checking the static files and the images. It's only protecting any other valid route that does not fall under this criteria. And I think if it does that, and so it definitely logged us in. So the callback URL is not here. There should be a callback URL here if you sign out. I think there's supposed to be a callback URL there. I'm supposed to set my callback URL to something. Let me check. Next. Next. Next and then yeah. And so here we have the authentication. We're supposed to set a callback URL, callback URL, URL, callback in the dot hem. It's supposed to, it's not logging me out. It's supposed to fill this up with a callback URL though. And okay, so maybe let me implement the sign out. If I go to, because the way we have it here is if you go to your application, it should be application, then we can, so it uses this auth CRF token and this auth session to authenticate us. I think you can also configure it to use a, you can configure it to use a, you can configure it to use, you can configure it to use JWT. I think so. When I read through that documentation, you can configure it to use a JWT, yeah, or something. I think you can always configure it to use that. So this is an example of, like, look, you can see they are unauthorized here now, right? And they are validating, but if there is like a ZOD error, they are just returning null here. But again, you can decide to, you can see another one here that if user is not found, it's throwing a error of user is not found here. So basically this is just something similar to just exactly the same thing I did there. So you can look at this sort validation here, right? Email is required, password should be more than 8 characters, should not be less than this, and these are all the jargons there, right there. But I think it would be nice to add all this, to be able to do passkey, to be able to do something like this passkey, which is quite key. So to be able to use passkey authentication for your authentication, and you can see this now. I would have loved to try this out. I'll try this out later. Because passkey is like another new way. Web authentication API is now, I mean, there's now so much emphasis around web authn, right? Which is a new method of, let's fix the bug I have first. I need to be able to sign out. So if I want to be able to sign out here, what I'll just do is just clear all the storage for this site. If I do clear that, it should allow us to go out. And if I try to sign in back with a valid user, and then it takes us to the dashboard. And so that's the whole flow of the authentication, right? Very, very, I mean, not too difficult, but to some extent it's kind of like straightforward. So again, I'm going to just quickly do the summary of that. We have this middleware, the TS, which guides all the things that is happening there. We have this auth.config.ts, which is where you set up um the whole the whole what's it called now? This is where you set up like the whole configuration for the way the auth works, right? And we also have auth.ts. So another thing you should note in the auth.config.ts is the callbacks that will be called anytime you have a successful if you have a successful login now. So this is the callback that will be called, which is what, right? You can see the console log here. And so this will check if the person is logged in, right? If the person is not logged in, right? And if they are not logged in, you want to route, basically, yeah, you just want to route them back to the dashboard route, basically, so that you can control things, right? And I think this is a very cool way to do the redirect as well, so that it will always have um the dashboard as the base URL there. And inside of the auth.ts, right, we did set up the next auth. You passed in our config, then we set up the providers. And the provider that we're using is credentials. And the major thing is you're using your email and password to log the person in, right there. So to implement a register flow, right, if we're going to implement a register flow, let's just adjust our login HTML to have some let's adjust our login HTML to have some and we also did let's just look at the other things that we did here inside the login flow, right? We created something called inside the action of TS. Now we created this authenticate. This authenticate is using signing. And where is this signing coming from? Signing is coming from what? Here, because we are exporting signing here, which is coming from Nextjs. So this Nextjs is what? Our whole configuration right here. That is, this is what authorize. This is the function that really does the decision whether somebody can log in or whether somebody cannot log in. This is us using Zod to do some validation, right? And if the validation is successful, you extract out email and password. You send your email to the database to check whether this email exists. If this user exists, right, you want to check whether their password match, right? And if the password match, you want to return that user. So this is the list of all those steps that we implemented there. And you are exporting out the signing, and the signing is used in the action. Authenticate is just await authenticate and does its thing. So if it's not successful, these are the two errors that we are handling. And in our login form, we use use form state, right, to help us to be able to manage the state of the form. And I think there's something else that we can do here, right? We can also use um we can use something called we can use another hook here. The hook is called use pending state. So while the person is trying to log in, you don't want them to log in twice. If somebody is trying to log in, you don't want them to log in twice, right? Just like if we log out here, we can sign. We've not implemented our sign out yet. Let's just go to applications and clear storage again, and you can refresh the whole thing. So if they're trying to log in, you don't want them to be pressing login. Let's say somebody has filled the information, and here you don't want them to be pressing this like multiple times. You only want them to press it once. so that while the request is still going on, you can disable the button. And to disable the button, right, we can use something we call what? The use pending. I think it should be use pending. See, use form, use, what's the name of that hook again? It should be what? Form status. Use form status. So use form status is a hook that sort of what is smart enough to understand the form that were inside. That is, it knows that if I check this form and the status of the form is still pending, then I'm not going to allow them to be able to what? To be able to do anything with this button. So we can just what? Add another word. You can say what? Aria what? Aria disabled, right? That is, disable this button. Aria disabled, right? You want to disable the button, right? And so if they are trying to submit the information right here, you are going to what? Disable the button. And that should be all. Why is this here? No, something must be wrong with you. Is Aria disabled not a proper? And this is where. So if we check this now, by the time you let's just refresh this and let's see the state where we are in. Maybe we should just slow everything down so that we are able to. I'm just going to slow it a little bit so that I can hijack the whole process. Right? I can hijack the whole process. This shouldn't be an error though. It should not. TypeScript, type children. This are disabled. It should be form status. Oh, okay. I think I see where the mistake is there. It's supposed to be destructured. This form status is supposed to return form status. What's the shape of form status? Let's see. Okay. I think pending should be a boolean. Okay, pending is a boolean, and we can now pass this. I guess this is why it wasn't working. So if we let's try to do something here. If you, this is the form, and we have a button. So we have Aria disabled. Is Aria disabled on it already? No, it should not be. Let's just do empty cache and reload. Aria disabled should not be this object here. It should be something fresh. It should be. It should be something. It should be something. It should be something. Let me try to log in and see. I'm just going to let me implement sign out. I will implement the sign out, and then I can track that Aria disabled there. So to implement the sign out, we just locate this sign out on our side nav. We have a side nav that we have implemented on, I think it should be, there should be a side nav on the dashboard. And we have the sign out here as well. So we want, anytime they click on that sign out, we can turn it to a button, or you can turn it into a button so that anytime they click on it, we can decide to carry out a particular action. So if the person clicks on, definitely we already have a function that we're using easily, right? So we're just going to wrap, this is the form here, right? This is the form here. And we just need what? An action, right? You need an action here. And now for this action to run, you want to say it is an async, and you want it to run on the server because we want our action here to run on the server. And it is going to be use server. So if you tell it use server here now, then it will run, even though this form is client side, but this action will only run on the server. And we can see how wait, then there is a sign out that we have. There's a sign out that we've implemented in the hot.ts. So if you look at our hot.ts, you can see that there's a sign out automatically given to us, right, that we can leverage there. And we can call the sign out, and that should be everything about the sign out. So if you go to the form now and we try to click the sign out, why is it not working? I think it works. So if you have here, we try to log in, and you can sign the whole thing out and it works. So basically that's the whole process of what you're logging in and logging out flow from scratch using hot.js. To quickly implement the register flow, right, I'm just going to copy an existing UI, right? I'm going to copy an existing UI and create. So in our I'm going to locate my login form, and I can paste the whole thing here. So what this is adding, the extra thing that this is adding here is that if you don't have an account, you can click on sign up and it goes to what? A register route. So if you look at what we have now, you should see what? Don't have an account, you click on the sign up. And so we need to create a new route to handle this. So to create a new route, you right click on the app, you create file, and you say what? Register dot what? Dot register / page dot tsx. You know that register is the folder and page dot tsx is our what? The file that we are using. And in our register, we can also what? You can copy what? I'm just going to copy some form of UI that we can quickly use here first there. So we have the logo, which is just the logo, and we have this form. So we'll go ahead and create this form inside app UI, and inside the UI you create what? Register form dot what? tsx. And I already have some HTML pre-written for that as well that we can quickly also leverage. right there. So here it's already some form of what form here, right, that helps us to, it's just the same thing um like the login form, right? Yeah, it has H1 at the top. It has some information here. But here now you can see that I am setting this to be type text instead of email. I am removing the client side validation. Then I'm creating area described by, and I'm calling the name what I'm passing email hero so that I can then use this email hero, right? So that once this element pops an error out, then this div will be rendered if there is an error right there. So that is what that does there. And I think if we have some, should have some other interesting things. Then you also have this, if you're already signed up, you can also log in here at the end. So if we look at this very well, it should be register. It should be register. UI forward slash should be register hyphen form. And now register hyphen form exists, and it is the whole of this whole thing. Again, it's just the same piece of information, but basically they're probably just doing something different. So if we go to the sign up route, so we see this here. So you have the email, you have the name, you have the password, and you have the current password. So the goal is, if they fill this, you also want to call a particular action, right? So the idea is that we would create a register in our action, which is something that we're going to create now. We'll create a register in our action. We don't have that already. And just the way we were using the use form state in the login, you're also going to be using use form state, and you're going to be using use form status. However, in this one, we set our initial state, right, to be what? We're creating our initial state to be message and error. That is, these errors is going to be the errors that Zod is going to be putting all the form input errors, right? And you can see that the use form state already has what the state and the dispatch. So we need to create this register. We don't have it yet. And you can also see the use pending as well, the use form status that returns pending as well. So that is that. So I'm just quickly going to go into the let's go into the register. We're supposed to have it inside actions. So what happens when somebody wants to register, right? So what are the things that would happen? It's going to be an async function, function register, and no, the steps here in the register is definitely going to look like very similar to the ones that we've been using before, right? Because the goal there is that somebody is filling some set of information for the first time, and we want to validate their information. And when we validate their information, then decide to send it to the database, right? When we send it to the database, then we can then go ahead and carry out some set of actions, right? So I'm going to wrap it inside a try and catch. And inside the try and catch, it's going to do a major I'm going to also write the comment on the step there. So the first thing is what? One, that is validate the data from the form, right? Then it goes ahead to create what? Create the user. And that is, before it even creates the user, I think I think this should be 3, because it's supposed to hash the password. It's going to try to hash the password. 2, hash the password. So hash the password means that the ordinary password that they are sending, convert it into the hashed version that we're going to be sending to the database. And once it does that, during the process of this create user, right, you can have different errors, right? Part of the errors you might get is you might get like a user already exists, right? So you can get a user already exists or whatnot. And if you create this user and it was successful, then you can try to sign the person in. So, and that is that very quickly. Then to help me to manage all of these here, I'm going to need a brief state, a brief state, and I'm going to be calling this, I'm going to type it to be register state, register state, register. Let's just call it register state or undefined, undefined, undefined. And then I'm going to be using my form data as usual. And to create this register state, let's just, because I need the typing off the top. So I'm going to type it here like this and say const register state register schema, right, is email, password, then we need name here. You want the name to be string, right? And let's do a minimum of one letter, and we also want to do like a confirm password, which is something that looks like this. Dot confirm dot minimum of 6. I think we've been using minimum of 6 for the password, and then we can do. So that is creating the Zod schema, and we then want to do some TypeScript information there. I want to do register.omit confirm password, so that I would have a type that doesn't have confirm password, and I want to extract out this type here and say register type will be. I saw this online though. Zod has something called register square bracket of underscore. I think it should be underscore output. Underscore output. So this way you are able to type your Zod. So it's supposed to give us an inferred. Let's just take it to the top. We can take this to the top because I think maybe we can call this. Give me a sec, please. So I can call this a small letter register because there's no point calling this a capital register. And we can, I think we can paste all of this back here now, right? And this should now be what? So this should be a type now that you can pass. And this is called the register type there. You can now use the register type. So the register type, we can now use the register type to to in our work, right? You can use the register type in our work, and we can also create another thing called Zod. Is just powerful because it was through Zod that I was able to just create type instead of just declaring type declarations myself. So I can do full register schema equals to so there is something that you can do to schema to do some extra validation that I did, which is what refine. So when you refine, you can now pass it a function. You can say data arrow of what, of something like this. So the idea here is we are confirming, you're trying to check that Zod should also validate that your confirmed password is the same thing as your what, as your password, right? And I think that is, and then you can now pass it the message that it should send. So you can say message password do not exist, and you can tell the path, right, that it should be something like this. And you see that I'm passing this to the register schema, the one that has the full detail right there. And we can also create our what, register type now. So we can do export type register state, and I think it should be just we can then do something like it should be this object and it should be errors. So this is going to be the errors that is going to be matching all of the errors that we are going to be dealing with. So email is an error here, right? And we can duplicate password. So this register type would help us to handle errors, just basic handle error. Basically, that's what it's going to help us to handle. And we have confirm password right there, and they are all going to be arrays of string. And we have this here, and I think the last one that we have is what, message message to be what, string. And you can see it can be string or null. And so we have this typed here already, and we can do a catch in this here, and you can catch this error, and you can write this here. So our register would now do something similar to this. The register is supposed to validate. We already have a way to validate, right? Where you are doing your full schema dot what, safe pass, right? And you pass it your email, right? You pass it your password, and you pass it your name, and you pass it your confirmed password. And so I'm also making sure that we are confirming our confirmed password from our input is confirm hyphen password, right? And we can do this right here. So if this, you take this into a variable, right, of validated fields equals to this, and if this validated field is successful, right? If it's not successful, you can will throw an error, right? That is, if validated field is not successful, right, you can throw an error where you can return a object of what, errors will now be errors colon validated field dot error dot. There's a flatten method on arrays that you can use to flatten the error. Then you can do dot field errors. And so this is all Zod validation make easy for us. And we can say that the message is what? Um, missing field, right? Missing require field or invalidator. Please try again there. So if this validation check has been done and it is successful, then we can extract out the three things from validated field. And if you extract out the three things from validated field, right, you can then hash your password, right? Again, we're going to use bcrypt to hash our password, right, by 10 rounds. And we can now try to create our user. So we need a method, a function to create what? User, right? You need a create user method. So to do a create user method, we need to write some SQL in this scenario to help us to what? To create what? A user. So I'm going to write the create user off the top here as well, which is an async function. It's supposed to be an async function, which is what? Create user. So it's supposed to accept all the whole data and that we're going to be using. What are we passing? Majorly, our database needs the data user database need storage. Where's storage? We need name, email, and password. That's the three things that we need. So we want it to be, you can say form data, and you can say it is colon what? Type of what? Register what? Register type. And here we can then do await, right? Await SQL. Then you can say insert into users, right? And form data.email, form data.password, and form data.name in that order, right? And if that is successful, you can close the quote, right? And await the result, right, into a variable result equals to this. And the way it works is that result is going to be result dot, so it will result dot row count. So if it returns one row was inserted, now it will return that row count whether it is one or not. That's what it returns. So we are doing something like this. So in here we can then call await, right, create user, and you pass your hashed password because it is the hash password that is the key here. And if you pass our hashed password, then we accept the result here into you can say row count, right? Row count equals to this. And we can now, if row count is now what? Because if row count is equals to what? If row count is equals to 1, that's when we know that it is successful. So if row count is not equals to 1, we can handle a error and say something that, well, database error, it failed to create the user. So again, we are returning the error in terms of message because we know that there's a message word field that we are depending on. So you can say database error, right? And you can say something like failed to create. Not try again now. Let's be clear. Failed to what? To create user. Okay. And then if it's successful, after this is successful, then the next thing we want to do is to sign in. What do we use to sign in? We have a sign in that we were already using before now, and you just sign the person in based on the email and the password, and you go. However, there are some, so when you sign in, because in here, in the method that signs in, if this method fails here, majorly because we are redirecting our user during the sign-in flow. right? It will always throw some error. So we can now have different error messages to error steps to handle the error. So there is one error to handle maybe user already exists, handle user already exists. So the code is, yeah, the code is 23550, right? If error code is equals to this, I think this is a Postgres thing though. So you can now say message email already exists. And you can also, if we have a redirect error, so there is a particular method in Next call is redirect. Redirect is a method provided for us that if there is a redirect error from Next itself, so instead of you throwing the error, then force them to redirect and let them go in. So just redirect them to dashboard, since the dashboard is the major part of our app, right? Yeah. So if there is redirect error, redirect them to this. You can always do this and do this here. And we can export what? You can export this by default. So, so this should be the whole of the whole thing that you can do with your login now. I don't know why we have some TypeScript error. Okay, yeah, I think I know why. I need to import is redirect. Import is redirect error from Next. Should be from Next client component redirect. And is redirect error should be used somewhere in this code. And so if we try this now, so if it is this, you want to return, this is the error here. Return this here. And if it is a redirect here, you want to also redirect. And the last one is you want to return a message. So in case there is another error that we don't know of, that we're not handling, and you want to log that. I think so. This should be it. However, I'm still having a error there. Success. Hash password. Create our user. Right. Then sign in. Right. Handle the first error. And we should be able to. I think this should work now. I'm going to try this if it works. So inside actions, we have error on line 174. 174. What's the error on line 174? What is the error on line 174? It's not saying this redirect error. So this is, if the error dot code is this, right? You want to return the error dot code is this, return and has to be this. Okay. So I'll probably complete the whole flow next Saturday. But we are almost done, right? I'm almost done there. So I'll try to complete the whole flow, right?